why the storms are sometimes darkest right before the breakthrough. I mean, nothing is guaranteed because there's no exact patterns, because there's always exceptions. But one principle that is true sometimes is that the storms are the very, very, very darkest and harshest right before the major breakthrough. And I have some thoughts on that. You might have heard the famous expression that that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And what happens is, like Joyce Meyer says, new level, new devil. In one of my books, I talk about how, as our challenges become greater, our resources also become greater, our personal resources, because we've had more successes to get to that level. So even though the challenge is more difficult, we bring more to bear to the problem. So you're not really ready to have a breakthrough sometimes until you kind of have struggled so intensely with the level that you're at. And that's one reason why the storms are darkest before, because it's kind of like until you've really wrestled with it, in an intimate way, in terms of like getting everything out of it, then you're not really ready to graduate to the next level. And the other thing is just like appreciation. Like I think that I'm successful at the level I'm at, and that's probably true for everybody, is because of all the great struggles I went through to get to this level. And if I hadn't, they say that like getting to the top is hard, but staying to the top is harder. I have an article on podcast on character is destiny, character and certainty. So what happens is that if you just rise too quickly and you don't go through all the struggles, then it's easy to fall, because then you think, oh, I'm so smart, I'm smarter than other people, look how quickly I rose and this and that, there's no stopping me. And you get arrogant, and pride cometh before a fall. I think that's in the Bible. So what happens is that if you grow more slowly, then it's more sustainable. I'm not saying it's always good to do things slowly, but it's good to reinforce the gains. That's what sleep does. Like what happens when you learn something and then you sleep, then the next day you remember it better because it goes from short-term memory to long-term memory. I'm not a sleep expert, but it's something like that. So it's the same thing with life and success and learning and growth, that if you bite off more than you can chew, then you might, then you're going to be slipping back a lot because you haven't really integrated it. Like if you really appreciate everything that you've learned, and if you learn how to integrate it, then it's more sustainable. Another reason why the storms, I think, are darkest right before the breakthrough, in my mind, oftentimes, is because of faith. They say faith can move mountains, but what builds faith? Faith is built by persevering through the hard times, and seeing that, God or life or whatever you believe in is there for you. And I think that, if we just believed a little bit and we weren't tested that much, then we couldn't have that much faith, because faith grows stronger. It's kind of like intermittent reinforcement. Like at a certain point, then it extinguishes, in terms of intermittent reinforcement. But if you got like, $10 every time you push the lever, and then, well, if you didn't get the $10, you wouldn't try it a few times and you didn't get it, you'd probably give up. But if you got the $10 a couple of times and then, 5 times in a row you didn't get it, you might still keep pressing it because like you remember when you got the $10. This is kind of the same thing in faith. It's like, I remember when I was successful before, and especially if you remember when you were successful after a long time of not being successful, that's what makes the motivation, the drive the strongest, because you're like, oh yeah, I had to struggle for months before I got it. And now I'm struggling for months again, but, I could be right around the corner because that's what happened last time. So I think for all those different reasons, I think that no predictability for sure, but I think those are some of the reasons in my mind in terms of why the storms are sometimes darkest right before the breakthrough.